He's not distant because he needs space. He's distant because someone else is filling it. And before you spend another night wondering what's wrong with you, wondering why he pulls away the moment things get close, wondering why his phone is always face down, and his explanations never quite add up, you need to hear this, because the signs were never about his attachment style. They were about her. If you've ever loved someone who made you feel like you were chasing a ghost, drop a ghost emoji in the comments right now and subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of thing most people only figure out after it's too late. There's a specific pattern that avoidant men follow when they're hiding another woman. It doesn't look like cheating. It looks like emotional unavailability. It looks like personal space. It looks like him just being him, and that's exactly why it works. So, let's talk about it. Number 1. He becomes unreachable in ways that feel almost reasonable. This is the first thing you notice, and the first thing you talk yourself out of noticing. He doesn't disappear completely. That would be too obvious. Instead, he becomes selectively unavailable. He responds to some messages and ignores others. He picks up some calls and misses others. He's present enough that you can't call it neglect, but absent enough that something in your gut starts whispering. And here's the part that makes it so emotionally disorienting. He always has an explanation. He was tired. He was busy. He had a work thing. He needed to decompress. And each individual explanation sounds completely believable. That's the trap. It's not one red flag. It's 100 tiny yellow ones arranged so carefully that you keep waiting for the picture to become clear before you trust what you're already seeing. An avoidant who is hiding someone doesn't go dark. He goes dim. Just enough light to keep you from walking away. Just enough silence to keep her close. And what happens to you in that space between his words and his actions is the most painful part of all. You start filling in the blanks. You start questioning yourself. You wonder if you're being too needy, too sensitive, too much. You apologize for wanting basic communication. You shrink yourself down to a size that feels acceptable to someone who never actually had space for you to begin with. This is not a you problem. This is a pattern, and it has a name. When someone uses selective availability as a control mechanism, what they're really doing is managing two emotional worlds at the same time. They give each person just enough to keep them engaged, but not enough to ever get the full picture. And the cruel genius of it is that the very trait that makes avoidance so hard to connect with, their emotional distance, becomes the perfect cover for a double life. Because how do you confront someone about pulling away when pulling away is just what they do? You don't, and they know that. So you wait. You give more. You make yourself easier to love, hoping that if you just stop needing so much, he'll come back. But he's not coming back from exhaustion or overwhelm or the weight of deep emotional complexity. He's coming back from her. And the worst part is, you already felt it. You just didn't have the language for what you were feeling. That's what this is about. Giving you the language, because awareness isn't just knowledge, it's power, and you deserve to see this clearly. Number 2, he protects his phone like it holds state secrets. Let's be honest about something. In a relationship where two people are genuinely secure and genuinely faithful, the phone is just a phone. It sits on the table face up. It charges on the nightstand without ceremony. Nobody flinches when the other person glances at the screen. The phone is boring because there's nothing to hide. But when an avoidant is managing another connection behind your back, the phone becomes the most guarded object in the room. And it's not always dramatic. It doesn't always look like him diving across the couch to grab it before you can see. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just a habit that slowly developed and you didn't notice when it started. He always has it in his hand. He takes it to the bathroom every time. He puts it face down the moment you enter the room. His screen brightness is always low. He turns away slightly when he's texting. He changes the subject when you walk in mid-laugh at something on his phone. He clears his notifications more often than you do. He sets a passcode you've never seen before and explains it as a security update. Each of these things alone means nothing, but you're not experiencing them alone. You're experiencing them as a pattern layered on top of the emotional distance, layered on top of the cancelled plans, layered on top of the gut feeling you've been trying to silence for weeks. And here's what's important to understand about the emotional psychology behind phone guarding in avoidant personalities. An avoidant already has a deep discomfort with emotional exposure. They're already private people, so when they add a secret to their existing walls, it becomes almost impossible to tell their natural guardedness apart from deliberate concealment. That's what makes this particular sign so uniquely painful. You've been trained, maybe by months or years with this person, to respect his privacy, to not be the jealous partner, to trust him, and now the very emotional discipline you developed to love him well is being used against you because the message you received early on was clear. He's a private person. Don't push. Don't pry. Give him space. And so you gave him space. And in that space, he built something you were never meant to see. Notice how your body responds when his phone lights up across the room. Notice what happens in your chest. Notice if you want to look and then immediately feel ashamed for wanting to. That shame is not your conscience telling you you're wrong for being suspicious. That shame is someone else's guilt being redirected at you so cleverly that you've taken it as your own. You're not paranoid, you're perceptive. Those are different things. Number 3, he pulls you close right after pulling away. This one is the most confusing because it's also the most intoxicating, and it might be the reason you've stayed longer than logic would explain. Here is what happens. He disappears for a while. He's cold, distant, unreachable. You start to pull back too, not as a strategy, but because you're tired and confused and a little bit worn down by the inconsistency. And then, just as you've reached the edge of your patience, just as you've started to wonder if this relationship is even real, he shows up. He's warm. He's attentive. He texts you good morning without being asked. He makes plans. He looks at you the way he used to. He says something that makes you feel seen, something specific about you, something that reminds you why you fell for him in the first place, and you feel the relief of it flood through your entire body. Because the person you love just came back, but he didn't come back because he missed you. He came back because something shifted with her. This is the cycle, and once you understand what's driving it, you'll never be able to unsee it. When a man is managing an avoidant attachment pattern alongside a hidden relationship, his emotional bandwidth fluctuates based on what's happening in both worlds at once. When the other connection is going smoothly, when she's meeting his needs and the thrill is alive, he has very little emotional energy or motivation to invest in you. You become background noise, an obligation he manages at minimum cost. But when there's tension with her, when she pulls back or pushes too close, or the dynamic becomes uncomfortable, which happens in every relationship eventually, he suddenly needs something stable. He needs you. He comes back to the relationship that feels safer because it's the one where he knows you'll receive him. You are not his primary. You are his emotional safety net. And this is what makes the intermittent warmth so psychologically powerful. The human brain is wired to respond more strongly to unpredictable rewards than to steady ones. Slot machines work on this principle. So does trauma bonding. When affection comes in unpredictable cycles, the brain begins to work harder to earn and maintain it. The highs feel higher because the lows were so low. The warmth feels more meaningful because you waited so long in the cold. This isn't love, it's a loop. And if you've been riding this loop for months and calling it a complicated relationship, I need you to sit with that for a moment. Because complicated is sometimes just the story we tell ourselves when the truth is too hard to say out loud. He's not complicated, he's divided. Number 4, he starts narrating a life you're not in. Pay attention to this one carefully because it's subtle, and most people miss it until they look back. When an avoidant is hiding someone, he begins to casually reference experiences, places, moments that don't quite connect to any timeline you're aware of. He mentions a restaurant he tried recently. You've never gone there together. He references a movie like he's seen it, but you never watched it with him, and he never mentioned going. He uses a phrase or an inside reference that means nothing to you, but he said it with the comfort of something familiar. He talks about his weekend in broad strokes that don't match the details you already know. He seems lighter about certain topics but heavier about others and can't quite explain why. He volunteers information in moments that feel slightly rehearsed, like he's covering a story before you think to ask. And when you do ask, even casually, even without accusation, he deflects. Not with anger necessarily, though sometimes that too, but with vagueness, with a quick change of subject, with an answer that technically responds to your question but leaves you with more questions than before. This is something deeply revealing about how the human mind manages deception. We are not as naturally skilled at lying as we think we are. The brain has to work harder to maintain a false story than to tell the truth. And one of the places this extra effort shows up is in the stories we tell about our own daily lives. The avoidant who is hiding a relationship starts to manage 2 parallel timelines at once, and while he's trying to protect both, cracks appear in the form of references that don't belong to your shared story. He's living a life on the side, and occasionally, accidentally, that life leaks into yours through a careless sentence, an unfamiliar name said once and never again, a shift in his routine that he explains too quickly. And you notice. You notice because you pay attention. You notice because you care. You notice because even when your mind is trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, your instincts are quietly keeping score. Trust your score. Because here's the thing about emotional intelligence that so many people get backwards. We're taught to question our feelings, to fact-check them, to not act on them until we have concrete evidence. But feelings are not irrational. They are information. They are the part of your brain that processes pattern recognition faster than your conscious mind can put into words. When something feels off, it is because something is off. The evidence might not be visible yet, but your nervous system has already done the math. Don't talk yourself out of the answer you've already arrived at. Number 5, he makes you feel like your needs are the problem. This is the one that does the most damage. This is the one that lingers long after the relationship ends. This is the one that makes you wonder months or years later if there's something fundamentally wrong with you that made love so hard to hold on to. There isn't. But let's talk about why he needed you to believe there was. When an avoidant man is hiding another woman, he faces a very specific emotional problem. He needs to manage your growing suspicion and discomfort without ever admitting to what's actually causing it. He can't say the truth. So instead, he reframes your reactions to the truth as the problem. You start noticing he's distant, so you bring it up, and instead of a real conversation, you find yourself suddenly defending your right to bring it up at all. He says you're being too sensitive. He says you're always looking for issues. He says you don't trust him, and that hurts. He says he feels suffocated when you ask too many questions. He says he needs someone who can give him space without making it a whole thing. And because you love him, and because you've maybe heard before that you can be too much, and because avoidants have a way of delivering these messages with just enough calm and just enough sadness that it doesn't feel like cruelty, you believe it. You start monitoring yourself. You start holding back the things that bother you. You start pre-editing your feelings before you express them to make sure they're acceptable. You stop asking certain questions. You stop bringing up certain topics. You become smaller, and he becomes more comfortable. Do you see what just happened there? Your discomfort, which was entirely legitimate and rooted in real signals your body was receiving from a real situation, was turned into a character flaw. You were given responsibility for managing an emotional dynamic that he was secretly creating. This is called DARVO: deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And while not every avoidant does this consciously, it doesn't matter whether it's deliberate or reflexive. The impact on you is the same. You stop trusting yourself. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop trusting the very internal compass that was trying to protect you. And this is why this pattern is the most damaging of all 5. Not because it's the clearest sign he's hiding something, but because of what it takes from you. It takes your self-trust. And self-trust is the foundation of every healthy relationship you will ever be in after this one. So, if you've spent time in a dynamic where your needs were consistently treated like a problem, I want to say something clearly. You were not too much. You were too aware, and that awareness threatened someone who needed you to stay confused. Let's bring this all together now, because patterns are only useful when you know what to do with them. Selective unavailability, a guarded phone, cycles of warmth and withdrawal, a life lived parallel to yours, and needs reframed as flaws. These are not random behaviors. They are a system, and they function together to create an environment where you are perpetually off balance, where you're always questioning yourself before you think to question him, where the relationship feels like something you need to work harder to deserve, rather than something that simply, quietly holds you. Real love does not require you to shrink. Real love does not penalize you for paying attention. Real love does not make you feel crazy for noticing the things that are actually there. Now, I want to talk about something that very few people address when they cover this topic, and it's the emotional aftermath. Because even if you've recognized these patterns, even if everything I've said tonight has hit you somewhere deep and specific, knowing something and leaving something are two entirely different mountains, there's a reason you've stayed. It's not weakness, it's not foolishness, it's the neurological reality of what intermittent reinforcement does to the human brain over time. The hope cycle is real. The moments of warmth felt real. The version of him that showed up occasionally, that looked at you like you were the only person in the room, that version felt real too. And it was. He just wasn't only showing it to you. But here is what I need you to hold on to. The love you felt was never the problem. Your capacity to love deeply, to see potential in someone, to stay through difficulty, those are not the things that betrayed you. Those are the things that will build something extraordinary when they are placed in the right hands. The problem was never your love. The problem was the address you sent it to, and that is something you can change. It requires getting honestly clear with yourself about what you've been tolerating and why. It requires sitting with the discomfort of uncertainty instead of reaching for the familiar ache of someone who keeps you just close enough to stay confused. It requires building back the self-trust that was quietly dismantled, sometimes over years, in a relationship that needed you not to fully trust yourself. That is real emotional work, and it doesn't happen overnight. But it starts with this. It starts with seeing the pattern for what it is. Not a relationship that's almost working. Not a person who almost shows up. Not a connection that almost feels like love. A system that was designed, intentionally or not, to keep you available, keep you guessing, and keep you from ever asking the real questions. Now you know the pattern. Now you can ask the real questions. And the most important question isn't even about him anymore. It's about you. What do you actually want from love? Not what you're willing to accept, not what you've been grateful to get in small doses. What do you actually, in your most honest self, want from someone who chooses you? I want you to think about that. Write it down if you can, because that list, that clear and honest and uncompromising list, is the standard you should be using from now on. Not his comfort level, not his timeline, not his capacity for openness on his best days. Your standard, built from your needs, honored without apology. You spent a lot of time in this relationship managing emotions that weren't yours to manage. You spent energy trying to be easier to love for someone who was directing love somewhere else entirely. You gave patience and grace and understanding and the benefit of every single doubt. Now give some of that to yourself, because the emotional intelligence you've been pouring into, trying to understand him, trying to decode him, trying to reach him, that same intelligence pointed inward, toward your own healing, toward your own clarity, toward your own future, is the most powerful thing you have. You are not broken, you are informed, and that changes everything. If this video reached something real in you, something you've been feeling but haven't had words for, drop a single word in the comments right now. Just one word that describes what you're feeling in this moment. That's it. One word. And if you want to keep getting this kind of honest, clear, no-nonsense emotional insight, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next video is going to go even deeper into the patterns that keep us in cycles we never consciously chose. You don't have to have all the answers today. You just have to be willing to look at what's already true, and you already are. That's why you're here.